Shut up and sit down.
Welcome back everyone to another MX Bikes track building tutorial video. In this video, I am going to show you how to render a height map out of Blender. I'm not going to show you how to create your height map in Blender other than just a simple plane. I might show you how to add one object to it, but I'm not going to show you all the techniques of actually building a height map in Blender itself. But this technique will help you a lot in maybe some future videos I'm going to do, or if you've got a mesh height map from somewhere and you need to get it out of Blender. So let's go ahead and give it a go. So the first thing we're going to do, just start up Blender, default, get rid of the cube and the light. You don't need that. You can keep the camera because we're going to use that later. But we are going to start with just a plane object. So Shift A, mesh, and we're going to select the plane. There we go. So now we need to resize this plane. Now from my testing, you don't want anything smaller than 100 by 100 or less than 100 meters in any of the directions. Once you get below 100 meters, the MX Bikes engine gives a lot of problems with frame rates and weird physics, even more weird than usual. So pick anything that's over 100 by 100. So, you know, I don't know what the standard is for a Supercross track, but let's just pick 200 by 200 and we'll call that good for this test. So we're going to go over, we're going to edit the size of our object, 200 by 200. We'll have to zoom out some here to see it. Let's get into the overhead view, which you can hit number 7 on your keyboard, and that will show us the overhead view from the top. Now, if you're just strictly going to render this out of Blender just to get the height map, you can leave it right here centered on the origin like that. However, if you're going to use this blank plane as the start of your Supercross track, or this is how I did my Enduro Cross track, you want to move that bottom left corner up to the origin, so then your height map is rendering, and when you place objects on this map and export those out, they're going to line up correctly on your track in MX Bikes when you build it. So let's go ahead and do that. We are just going to move it really easy. You can just go half of 200 is 100 over and 100 up. So now our 200 by 200 meter plane is centered, has the lower left centered on the origin, and that's how we need it for use in game to make it easier. Now, just another reminder, you could have had a height map again already created from Leveler, L3DT, a mesh from somewhere else, a point cloud that you did. As long as it's plain and you have it imported into here, I'm going to show you how to create the material that we need to actually get it rendering out as a correct height map file, as a PNG that you can then convert into RAW or use as a PNG in the Resolute track builder helper. All right, so the next thing we need to do is I want to create the 0 point on this height map. If you don't create an area that is at 0 meters, or if your whole height map is based at 0 meters and you ride on it in game, you get these things I call them terrain spikes. That's when the deform is trying to happen, but you're at 0, it can't deform down, so it does some weird things and it creates these spikes that shoot out of the ground. And that's just happening because it can't deform down anymore. And probably a bug in the game, it will shoot these spikes up. So in order to get around that, on any height map you make, no matter if it's in Blender, L3DT, whatever, Photoshop, you want to have a portion of your height map to be at 0, full black, where you're not going to be riding. Everything else, have that above, higher than that in elevation, so that you have room to deform, to dig down in your soil layers down to that 0 point. Easiest way I'm going to do it for this particular plane, it's just a simple plane. So I'm going to make sure I select my plane. We are then going to go in edit mode. I'm going to hit tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a loop cut. on the Y, I'm just going to drag it over because this edge is my map. Nobody's going to be writing on that. I'm just going to make that. We're done. I'm going to switch to this. I'm going to select my far edge. And let me get into a better view, Shift tilde, so I can then fly around and so you can view this edge that I have selected here. So again, I'm going to go to edge mode up here, select my edge, and now I'm just going to go down. I'm going to drop this down 5 meters. So I'm going to go -5. Now, what that did is it dropped everything down 5 meters on this very edge. Now my main plane, the main plane of my big height map plane is now 5 meters above the lowest point, which is this edge here. So that's great. Now what I can do is get out of edit mode, hit tab. Now we want to bring this low edge up to 0. So now again, this is thinking forward. If we're going to start putting objects on this height map, we need to have our lowest point at the 0 in the map. So we are going to go ahead and raise this up 5 meters. And there we go. Our lowest point is now at the origin. Everything else is 5 meters above. So 5 meters in Imperial, roughly, that's going to be 15 feet. I have 15 feet to deform down to this, or to sculpt my terrain to go lower than this plane right here. You can pick any number you want. I could have picked 100 meters. Doesn't matter. The thing that matters is this is our 0 point. We're not going to be riding over here, and this is above it, so we get good deformation in the game. Right, and I can probably, just to make it easier, let's apply the scale and the location. And now everything is at 0, 0, and our scale is 200, 200, and the Z is 5 meters from there to here. The next step, we have to create an emissive material. So in order to do that, I'm going to come over. I have my plane selected here. I'm going to go over to the materials. I'm going to create a new material. I'm just going to rename it, call it emissive material. You can name this whatever you want. And now I'm going to go into the shader editor so we can get the nodes set up correctly. And to do that, you can either come over here on the top. You can go over to shading, and that gives you a different view. Or if you go back to your general, you can change this down here. We will change this to the shader editor, and let's pull this up and let's zoom in. Get that over to the center. Do this so you guys can see this a little better. And we're going to get rid of this principal BSDF node here. So let's go ahead and we are going to add a, let me see, an emission, an output. I want to do that. Let's just hook up the node to the surface, and let me zoom in some more for you guys. Right, and we are then also going to add a color ramp. Whoops. It's under converter. So color ramp here, color to color. And we will change nothing on that yet. Oh yeah, slightly different. And we are going to add separate RGB. Oh, no, I'm sorry, XYZ. And we are moving the Z to the factor here. And then we also are going to add a texture coordinate. And we are going to just go generated to our vector. All right, so if I zoom out a little bit, this is what it looks like. Texture coordinate, your generator is going to the vector, separate x, a y, z. The z is going to the factor. We're doing the z because we're doing the up and down. The emission node, your color ramp is going to go into the color of that. And then that just goes to your surface. All right, so our material is set up. So next we will actually then have to change something in our color management. So over here, click on the camera and we are going to go down to color management. It's the last section here. And we need to change this to display device, XYZ. The view transform, we're going to change that to raw. And the sequencer, we are going to change that to linear. Now, at this point in time, we'll see, let me close this shader editor. We can see the look of our color management has changed a little bit. It's gray here. If I actually then go over, if I change to my viewport shading, we can now see this is rendering in our view as what we would expect the height map. So you see our black is the very bottom edge, that's at 0. And then it gets lighter up here. This plane is white, full white, 100%, because this is our tallest area, our flattest area, which is at 5 meters. So again, that part is good. So now, this is just a reminder. So we changed our color management down here just for the purpose of the rendering of our height map to get everything looking good. Now, if you were going to use this same project to add your track objects, you know, arches, hay bales, tough blocks, whatever, that color management is going to make them look a little weird. You know, it's not going to be perfect. It doesn't matter because you're not really rendering anything other than this height map. But if you want to switch it back, just, you know, change back your color management, sRGB, view transform standard, and then again your sRGB. And then just always remember, if you're going to do your height map, you have to be in this XYZ, raw, and linear. All right, the next step, we need to change our output. When we're going to start rendering this height map, we need to tell MX Bikes, you know, this has to be a power of 2 plus 1 pixels. So if you are going to do a 2K height map, that needs to be 2048 plus 1 pixel equals 2049. So let's go ahead and do that. What we're going to do is we're going to come to our output here. Our resolution, we are going to change that to 2049 by 2049. And again, if you were using a rectangle, change that 2049 by 1025, or if you started out 4K, you would have been 4097 and then by 2049. Remember, it always has to be a power of 2 plus 1 for your height map dimensions. All right, and then we're also going to set up how we are going to be exporting this out. So now again, we're going to set up to black and white. We're going to set up to 16-bit. We don't want to compress anything. That's fine. And now we're saying this as a PNG. You can set it to any of these, Targa, whatever. If you do the Targa or the PNG, it doesn't matter. You can open it up in Photoshop or GIMP. You can then convert it to a raw file. That's what you've used in MX Bikes. It requires the .raw file extension converted from Photoshop or GIMP. If you're using the Resolute MXB Track Builder helper, we're going to leave it as a PNG because the helper will convert it to raw for you. So you can skip that whole step of going to Photoshop or raw and Photoshop or GIMP to do that conversion to raw. Just leave it as PNG. So again, we have that all set up here, and let's go on to our next step. All right, next step is setting up our camera. So if you remember, we have our camera still here. What we need to do is we need to get it set to the top, and we're going to change it to orthographic. But let's just first we can go, we want to get this centered over let me just get it to 000 first. And make sure to reset your rotation also to 000, so it's from a top-down view. And actually what you want to do is you want to raise it up. It can be anywhere as long as it's higher than the highest point of your track here. So let's look at this. It's below our track right now. So I am just going to move that up to 10 meters. Doesn't matter. And then we're going to do this. We're going to change it into orthographic, and I will show you that in just a second. All right, so with your camera selected, again, we reset everything. We moved it above the highest point on our height map, reset our rotation. We're going to click down here on this camera, and we are going to change this to orthographic. That'll then make sure it's, I don't know exactly how to explain it. It's from top down, from one direction. So let's go ahead and we're going to then change the scale. So the scale needs to match our height map width. So if you remember, our height map is 200 meters by 200 meters. So let's select our camera again. Our scale is also going to be 200. Zoom out. So now it's as big as our height map. And again, I'm going to go to hit 7 on your keyboard to get our overhead view, and we need to line this camera up, so we're going to move it over 100 and we'll go up on our Y 100. So now it is perfectly lined up with our height map. Camera set up, we're ready to go. Next step. All right, at this point in time, very important, if you have other objects, very good idea, put them in a new collection, like my track objects or track objects. And at this point in time, when you have your other objects in this folder here, this collection, you want to turn them off in a render. You do not want them rendering. You just want your height map rendering. So you're going to turn those off. Again, any objects that you have in here, they will not render then, and you won't end up with a screwy height map. Or a bad render. So again, you don't have to worry about the camera. It's not going to render. You can turn it off if you want. It doesn't matter. But you do want to make sure your plane that you are rendering is the one that has that. And again, if you have multiple planes that you're working with for height maps, make sure that you have the material set to your emissive material. And then at this point in time, all that you need to do is hit F12 on your keyboard. It's going to bring up the render. And this one isn't much to look at. We'll see over here is you can see the full black with the gradient going up into our full white plane. That is it. Now, all you have to do, you can save this. We'll just save this into here. And this will be my heightmap.png. And if you see over here, it's black and white, 16-bit, what we needed. And there we go. That is how you render the height map out of Blender. All right, so I've copied these two objects. I have a jump and a 180 berm that I copied from another project. And all of these are just some objects. So I'll turn it into wireframe mode here so we can see. But basically, just like that. And what we want to do, I'm going to show you a little bit how I set up my project when I was adding these, and you need to merge these to your base height map. So first thing I'm going to do, I'll go back into our material mode here, preview. I'm going to name this. I want to keep this. First, I'm going to go up to my filters. I'm going to make sure I activate this selectable. Because there's some things this makes it so I can't select this object. You can turn that on and off. That is always very helpful when you are working in Blender. You have set all of your objects. You can do it on a whole collection too. Do it like this. That means I can't select these and accidentally move them. That's one thing you should definitely get used to doing, is making your objects not selectable. But back to our plane. I'm going to rename this to, you can rename it whatever you want. Usually I'll just do like base height map. And I know I don't ever want that one to be rendered because we're going to be copying that. We need to get these objects onto this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use Shift and my right click to put my 3D cursor up here on my height map somewhere. And I am then going to take my berm and I'm going to go Shift S and I'm going to go selection to cursor. So now my berm is up here. And I probably would want to have, let me move this camera up. I'm actually going to move the camera and get it. Like I said, it doesn't matter. We just want to get it out of our way. Doesn't matter how high. Now this height, we know this height map is 5 meters. So when I copied this up here, it's a little bit higher, 5.0039. I'm just going to reset that to 5 because then I know it is now level with this height map. So now I could move this wherever I wanted. I could rotate it on Z, move it any direction I want. We'll put it right there. And we are going to do the same with this jump. Now, if I wanted to, let's say we'll put the jump here. In most cases, I would probably have these in some kind of template collection. And I would duplicate it, Shift D, and then I would go Shift S and then selection that cursor. And then so now my jump is up here, same thing, make sure that's selected. I'm going to reset that to 5. And now I have a jump and I have a berm on my track. Now, we need to merge these to our height map so we can render them all together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select those two objects. Then I'm going to select my height map. So now they're all selected. I made sure to select my height map last because now I'm going to duplicate them and then I'm going to join them up together. So Shift D. Now they are all duplicated. Now Control J. Now they are all in my base height map here. So if I hide, go ahead and hide this, and I hide my original height map. So now you can see they are rendered. They are now taking the material, because remember we have our emissive material. They are now showing up on my height map the way that they should. And all that I have to do now is make sure this is selected, make sure it's render. It's in render mode. And I'm going to hit F12. And we have a problem. Let's see what that is. Try to figure that out. It's all black. All right, so the problem is, it turns out, is the clipping on my camera is set to, by default, 100 meters. And we had actually moved our camera up 191 meters. So I'm just going to set that back down to like 75. And then now when we F12 this, here we go. Now that's our height map rendered, and you can see our berm's there. The jump is there. Full black is on that edge. The highest points is probably going to be the top of this jump. So now, again, you just image, save this as whatever your height map that you want to save it as. And going back, now this is the important part. When you're editing this, select your height map that you joined everything together. You can now look at your Z, 6.56 meters. That is going to be the scale that you enter into for your height map. So of course your X and Y will be your X and Z, I believe, in MX Bikes, whether you're manually modifying the files or if you're using the track builder helper, 200 by 200 and then 6.56 as your scale. Now, let's say that you wanted to edit to this. Remember, we joined everything together, so that's why I would just delete that. I would now go back to my base height map. I'm going to look at these things that I had, and again, okay, we don't want our thing here. We're going to move it up here. We're going to rotate it on Z a little bit, and let's say we want another jump. We're going to duplicate this one, and we're going to move it back over here. make another one, duplicate it, Shift D is what I was doing. And that is now, we have 3 jumps there. Let's say we wanted to make this one bigger. Remember our scale was 6.56 or something. We're going to scale this one up. Let's just scale it. Like this isn't, I wouldn't be doing this in real life. I'd be doing probably a different way, but we're going to make a huge jump. All right. So now again, let's select these, select our height map. We're going to Shift D to duplicate everything. I'm moving it. I'm going to just right click with my mouse. It'll put it right back into place. And now I'm going to Control J to join them all. Oh, got to be in, the mouse has to be in that window. And now I'm going to hide all my track objects here. I can just get rid of this or either do that or get rid of them. But the main important thing is make sure they're not in the render mode. So I can just turn it all off. But I'm just going to make sure that's off, hide it for now. And I'm going to hide and make sure my base height map is not rendering. I'm going to hide that. So now when we select this, our new height is 9.86 meters. So every time you modify your height map, you add things, change things, just take a look at your Z 9.86. That's your scale. Change that for MX bikes. And again, we'll just F12, render it, and here's our new one. So this is now our really big jump that we scaled up there. That's it, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. There's many ways in Blender to build jumps. I know Ruben has probably been working on a tutorial on how he uses Blender to do his MX tracks. I did it. I used Blender to do the Enduro Cross. I was actually using 2 height maps. It's pretty complicated, my workflow. I might maybe share that someday, but if you have any questions, hit me up in my Discord. But I hope this helps you guys out when you're trying to render a height map out of Blender. Thanks a lot. Give me a thumbs up, leave me comments, and I will catch you guys on the next one.